The supernatural God is not unfalsifiable. Many are inhibited from accepting the evidence of the non-existence of the supernatural gods because of the statement gods are unfalsifiable. They mean to convey that the existence of the supernatural, leprechauns, ghosts, unicorns, magic and witchcraft, miracles and God, cannot be shown to exist or not to exist. In a debate I was involved in, a YouTube personality calling himself Big Lundy, in an effort to demonstrate the truth of the above remark, quoted one Ludwig Wittgenstein. To say that you know something is as ridiculous as to doubt that which you think you know. This states that knowledge does not exist, that nothing is true. This is a false assertion, a superstition. The word supernatural, unicorn, God is a title. People term that title a negative and assert that you can neither prove nor disprove a negative. Calling the word supernatural God a negative and asserting that you cannot prove a negative is true or false because it is a negative is erroneous. A negative is a thing that by definition does not exist, is false. Compare these sentences. You cannot prove God is false because it is a negative. You cannot prove a negative is false because it is a negative. You cannot prove God is false because God is false. They have simply stated that you cannot prove a false thing is false. If the supernatural gods exist or do not as readily as do apples, then they have simply stated that you cannot prove apples exist or do not because they are apples. The only thing that can be proven to be false is a false thing by virtue of its falsity. The only thing that can be proven to be true is a true thing by virtue of its truth. This dictates that we can only know true things. We cannot know 1 + 1 = 5 because it is false. We can believe 1 + 1 = 5, but we have ventured into the realm of belief, superstition, faith, insanity. By asserting that something is unfalsifiable, you cannot prove if apples exist or not. You have claimed that knowledge does not exist, that evidence does not exist for the existence of apples, that you cannot know that apples exist, that it cannot be true that apples exist. If nothing can be proven to be true, 1 + 1 = 2, this dictates that nothing is true. And if nothing is true, this dictates that it is not true that anything exists. And if nothing existed, you would not be reading this. If the statement the supernatural exists is false, then its falsity can be shown because it is false, as false things are the only things that can be known to be false. Succinctly, they have turned from their argument for existence, all you see exists because God created it, to an argument of non-existence. The supernatural gods are unfalsifiable, as their evidence for the existence of their God. The Christian has claimed both sides of the argument as their own. Example, Christian, God exists. You, no, it doesn't. Christian, you can't say that because God is unfalsifiable. They have claimed both sides of the argument are true. To demonstrate that one side, yours, is false. To demonstrate that God exists, they must claim it does not. For it to be possible for their God to exist, it must be impossible for it to exist. Everything is both true and false. Everything exists and nothing exists. Bluntly, they have stated that if the supernatural God does not exist, that means that nothing exists. This is the conclusion of their statement. Thus, it can be proven that you exist and that all questions of the existence of a thing can be answered, because it is true that any given thing actually exists or does not. By adopting the Christian Big Lundy Ludwig Wittgenstein unfalsifiable mantra, all you are actually saying is, if neither Wittgenstein nor I could prove that the supernatural gods exist or do not, then that means it is impossible to prove. I will now prove that the supernatural does not exist. The argument from a disconnect to reality, or the supernatural doesn't exist. Perhaps you have heard a Christian superstitious individual make the proclamation that with God anything is possible. What are the properties of the existence we inhabit at this very moment? We arrive at 3 possible choices. A place where nothing can happen, a place where only some things can happen, a place where anything can happen. To determine which one of those possibilities is the place in which you dwell, you must test each in turn. Use your hand to pick something up. You have just determined that you do not dwell in an existence where nothing is possible, as well as having determined that you at least live in an existence where some things are possible, because you just picked something up. And now you must test if you inhabit an existence where anything is possible. Our test will be the ability to teleport to the Red Sea and, as Moses did, part it, divide it in 2 with a wave of your hand. Take the time now to teleport yourself to the Red Sea and part it with a wave of your hand. You will discover that you cannot, and you have concurrently discovered that you do not inhabit an existence where anything is possible. If you inhabit an existence where some things are possible, picking up a pencil, if something you cannot accomplish in that existence, parting the Red Sea with a wave of your hand, becomes possible, then the existence you inhabit is an existence where anything is possible. But as our Red Sea test has confirmed, we do not live in an existence where anything is possible, and that would be the existence existence we inhabit if there were a creature that could part the Red Sea with a wave of its hand. If anything were possible, anyone or anything, grass, chairs, leprechauns, lions, your fingernail, could teleport itself to the Red Sea and part it with a wave of its hand if it so desired. For a supernatural creature that can part the Red Sea on a whim to exist, the ability for a creature that can part the Red Sea on a whim must exist for a creature to be able to come into existence that can part the Red Sea on a whim. The supernatural must exist independently of the creature. The creature cannot invent the supernatural after it has come into existence. Reality, the very fabric of existence itself, must be conducive to such feats, and the scientific test you just attempted, parting the Red Sea, confirms it is not. This dictates that it is impossible for a creature that can accomplish the impossible, supernatural feats, to exist, no gods, deist or otherwise. This also confirms that the reality you are able to measure, note, observe, the natural world, does exist and is the only existence there is, as we have demonstrated that the supernatural world does not exist. Erroneous counters you will receive to this argument. As the above demonstrates that if a supernatural entity could turn a human being into a pillar of salt, that you would be that entity because you would be able to do anything, as doing anything would be possible. People have attempted to draw analogies to counter this fact. Counter 1. Your argument is obviously false, because what you are saying is that if a human can dunk a basketball, then all humans would be able to dunk a basketball, because all humans should be able to part the Red Sea. But we know all humans cannot dunk a basketball, so explain this. This is not an analogy. In an analogy, you are replacing the nouns in the thing you are analogizing with nouns of equivalent value. Let us test the person's statement for this. The person replaces supernatural entity with a natural entity, a human being. The person replaces the supernatural event, parting the Red Sea, with a hand gesture, with the natural event, dunking a basketball. The person replaces the question, why can't everyone part the Red Sea, with a hand wave, with why can't everyone dunk a basketball? The answer to their query is simple. An hour-old infant nor a man confined to a wheelchair can dunk a basketball, because the supernatural, magic, anything being possible, does not exist. If the supernatural, magic, anything being possible existed, then the hour-old infant and the man confined to a wheelchair would both indeed have the ability to dunk a basketball, because anything is possible. In essence, the person has claimed that their evidence that anything is possible, the supernatural exists, is that some people can dunk a basketball. Counter 2. My God can part the Red Sea. The reason we can't is because we don't know how. This person has stated that the supernatural, magic, exists independently of his God, and that all things, animate and inanimate, have access to it, and that our only limitation is that we have not discovered the secret to accomplishing that access as has his God. He has stated that you, like his God, can create a universe and populate it with human beings, but you don't because you haven't figured the method out. Since anything would be possible, you can magically make yourself know how, or in other words, simply just do it. This person has claimed that the reason some people cannot dunk a basketball is because they do not know how, not because they are too short or not athletic or an infant. They have also stated that dunking a basketball is magic, a miracle. Counter 3. Anyone can perform supernatural feats, but God has created a pocket around us so that we can't. This simply states that the supernatural exists independently of their God, and that, like their God, anyone and anything can use it, but that the supernatural entity has abolished, destroyed, the very thing that is required for its existence, the supernatural. It states that the supernatural both exists and does not exist, demonstrating the absurdity of positing that anything is possible. It states that anything can be possible and anything can't be possible at the same time. The supernatural entity exists and doesn't exist. It parted the Red Sea and it didn't. It turned a woman to a pillar of salt and did not. Everything exists and does not exist. Everything is true and everything is false. You are wearing socks and are not. All these things must be concurrent or the supernatural does not exist. A thing that is happening, wearing socks, cannot not be happening, not wearing socks, due to the fact that it is happening. You are wearing socks. Their claim is that two opposing states are the same thing, that you are both evil and not evil, good and not good, bad and not bad. This same person would perhaps tell you that Adolf Hitler was both bad and good, as their evidence that opposites can exist as one. Bad and good are not opposites. Their opposites are detailed above. They are claiming both sides of the argument are true. Anything is possible and anything isn't possible. To demonstrate that one side, anything isn't possible, is false. A classic example of this is a person stating that just because I can't do it doesn't mean that God can't. Counter 4. Anyone can perform supernatural feats, but God has ordered that we don't. And God has informed us that those people that disobey and do are witches. witches, and we are to murder them. This simply states that the supernatural exists independently of their God, and that, like their God, anyone can use it. And as we have demonstrated that it is impossible for the supernatural to exist, you can let go of your murderous predilections. It also states that people that dunk basketballs are witches.